There's a few possibilities here, John. First off, I want to get a broad take on what happens if Aereo actually loses. The company has said, hey, guys, I got no plan B.
Yeah, well, that is true. Yeah, the CEO, Chet Kanoja, has said that to us, Alex. And what I find fascinating, on some levels, that's not a surprise that the little Aereo that could, the upstart that is taking on these big broadcasters would say, we've shown our cards, we got nothing else. What's just as interesting to me, probably more so, is that the broadcasters collectively really don't have a plan B. Not to suggest that they haven't thought a lot about this issue. But because you've got so many big players that are collectively going after Aereo, we kind of forget that they each have their own businesses, they each have their own strategies. So if they were in a position to sort of listen to a Supreme Court ruling and find out that all of a sudden Aereo is okay and can proceed with its business, which is basically on hold right now, boy, would that be an interesting scenario, especially given what Alex was just telling you about the consolidation with the pay TV players and maybe those players getting better leverage in their deals with the broadcasters.
And the question is, we've heard a lot about perhaps they'll transform more into cable channels, versus a network, for example. They might launch their own streaming service. These are some of the ideas that we've heard of. But net, they can't do this overnight. I mean, this would be a long-term strategy change.
That's true. I mean, they basically have four cards that they can play. They could continue to try to battle this in the courts some way. They could continue to sort of on the regulatory front try to make for pushes on Aereo, say with the FCC, to force it to follow the rules that other multi-channel video distributors have to follow and pay affiliate fees. They could fight this through Congress. And to your point, on the business side, they could say, hey, you know what? If Aereo's going to do this, CBS, for example, isn't going to be a broadcast network anymore. It's going to be a cable channel. Now, I think there would be some backlash from doing that because there are still millions of people who are watching ABC, NBC, CBS through an old-fashioned antenna. But their defense is certainly going to be, well, we wouldn't be doing this if Aereo wasn't forcing us to do it. So I think you're right. It doesn't change overnight.
And, John, my last quick question here is what happens if the Supreme Court doesn't rule at all? I mean, do they go back to the drawing board?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly the Supreme Court has been under pressure to come forward with something. I think, it's very possible that the language could leave a little wiggle room for both sides. And in that case, maybe this court battle does continue. But, a lot of people do think that this is going to be somehow resolved after what we hear from the Supreme Court initially.
And not to mention any competition that comes up for Aereo if the Supreme Court winds up ruling for it. All right. Thanks so much, John. Erlichman is watching Aereo for us.